Welcome to the Sober Nation FM podcast, where we're putting recovery on the map. I'm your host, Jonathan Sylvester. This show is brought to you by Sobriety Engine. Do you want to take your recovery to the next level? Do you want more support, community, and fellowship? Sobriety Engine is an incredible free online community of men and women supporting each other in their recovery. You can get a ton of great tips, resources, and guidance to help you succeed in recovery and in life. Visit sobrietyengine.com to join today. Sober Nation FM is also brought to you by Recover Health. If you're ready to get fit and start living a healthier lifestyle, all while supporting your sobriety, then you can learn more about having me as your own personal fitness and nutrition coach at rcvrhealth.com. And whether you're listening to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or watching on YouTube, please share this with your friends. Follow, subscribe, and leave a review. Nation, let's hop right into today's episode.
Today, I'll be speaking with life mastery coach and author, Dennis Berry. Thanks for coming on the show, Dennis.
Thank you, Jonathan. Great to be here, man.
Yeah, glad to have you. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about how you help others as a coach, as well as your book. But first, I'd really like to hear more about your journey in recovery. So where would you say your relationship with addiction started, and what did life actually look like before you got sober?
Wow. Well, that's a long story.
It is. Yeah, I'm packing it all into one tiny little question there.
All right, cool, man. No problem. Well, if I'll do definitely the condensed podcast version, but when I was 5 years old, my grandmother said to my mother, "He worries like a little old man." At 5 years old. And wow. So you fast forward. I was already full of fear and insecurity and this big, crazy, scary world. Didn't know how to handle it. And fast forward 10 years of those feelings over and over and over and over again. And I took a drink. I was 15 years old. And I was like, I don't have to feel that way anymore. I don't have to feel anything anymore. And so I liked that. That was a big help. And, the drink turned into the weed, to the coke and everything else. And then fast forward another 15 years after college, car accidents, DUIs, arrests, broken relationships, financial shit. Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. Right. I think they can handle it.
All right, cool. I thought so. I mean, I don't know if you saw have you seen my podcast, the Public Brain podcast? Yeah. Yeah, we let it roll. Okay. So, you fast forward to I was 31 years old. And I was dying, physically dying, emotionally dying, all the same story as everybody else. My sad story is my sad story. And I was physically dying. And, at the end, I had a girlfriend at the time, and which was really weird because I was really gross and awful. And she came over to my apartment one day, and I was out on like a week-long coke bender, and she just looked, and I was passed out in my clothes. I was 70 pounds heavier than I am now. And I had dark circles under my eyes, and I peed my pants, and I was just like a mess. And she looked and she's like, we can't do this anymore. This isn't going to work. And I just started crying. And I said, I can't stop. And I can't stop. And so, we talked for a little bit. She got online back at the old dial-up connection. So this was April 8th, 2003. So it'd be 18 years ago now. And I got into a treatment facility about 2 days later, and I've been sober since.
Wow.
That's definitely the 2-minute version.
Yeah, you shortened that one up there. Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, so let me ask you, I mean, were there any, we talk about and hear about like these seeds being planted at different points along the way. And I know that I had done my research, so to speak, like I had gone to a few 12-step meetings, and I had heard about, okay, maybe I could go to treatment. Was there anything you tried before actually going into treatment? Like, what did that look like? I'm sure there was a trying to slow down or trying to come up with some magic formula or something along the way, right?
Yeah, and great question. And I tell this to my clients all the time when they have setbacks, or anybody else who, feels like a failure, things aren't going perfectly. When they look at me or you or somebody who's been sober a while, is successful, I'm happy, I smile, I have a good business, and I'm healthy. And they didn't see, you see a man with 18 years of sobriety, you didn't see the hundreds of failures, the failed attempts at this before I got here. Nobody sees that. So there were psychologists, psychiatrists, other rehabs. There were different types of attempts and failures before I got here. Absolutely. And it happens, I think, over and over again. I had a client just over the last couple of weeks. He went out and he's in New Zealand, and he went out, and I don't know the life over there, but to him, it's a different, slower, laid back kind of life. But he didn't understand his feelings. He's sober for a couple of weeks, and then he would go out drink again. And then he looked at me. He's like, how I don't know how you do it. I was like, well, keep going. We're going to get there.
Yeah.
And so I want everybody to know that up front. It's not an easy road to recovery. We say in the world of recovery, you only have to change one thing, and that's everything.
Right.
I had to change everything. The biggest thing that I had to change is my thinking. And people I want everybody to understand this. It's like, this isn't a not drinking contest. This isn't a not smoking weed contest, a not snorting cocaine contest. This is about growing up.
Yeah.
It's about looking the world in the eye, being honest, living a life of integrity. These are things I didn't know how to do before I got sober. And when I got sober, I thought it was a not drinking contest. And I didn't realize I had to be honest and let go of resentments and grow into some sort of spiritual life, take care of my health, drink a lot of water, stop eating crap, stop smoking. I had to change the way I look at the world. It's the same world out there. I had to change the way I looked at it and the way I approached things.
Yeah. I agree completely. And it does take a while to see how everything is connected back to the sobriety and vice versa. Right. I mean, like it all plays a part for sure. So I did want to ask, I mean, after you go to treatment, then what's the next step? You get out of treatment and what do you do from there?
Well, everybody has a different path, right? And, when you go to treatment facilities, and this was a long time ago for me, is 18 years. So, I remember parts of it, but I always remember they were trying to push the continuing care stuff. And I want everybody to know it's a different path for everybody. For some people, they need that. Some people can't go an hour without being alone and sober. So, go there. Actually, if you need to go to a halfway house, if you need to go to other outpatient therapies,
right?
Meetings, AA meetings, 12-step meetings, whatever floats your boat, whatever A meeting you need to go to, surround yourself with the fellowship. Is one of the best things about the 12-step program. It really is the fellowship, surrounding yourself with like-minded people. So, if I get out of there and go back and hang out with the same old friends and the same old people doing the same old crap, I'm going to end up doing the same old crap too. And it's going to be a waste of time. So, I was taught early on that if I want to be successful, I want to surround myself with success. If you hang out with 5 millionaires, you're going to be the next millionaire. If you hang around with 5 stoners playing Xbox all day, you're going to get really good at Xbox, So when I started getting healthy afterwards, I started realizing if I want to stay fit and healthy, I need to surround myself with health and fitness. So I became a personal trainer years ago. I don't specifically do that anymore, but it's the same with sobriety. It's like, if I want to stay sober, if I want to start changing my life and live a meaningful, honest life of integrity, have good relationships and learn how to face the world on life's terms, surround myself with success, surround myself with sobriety, with clean people, with people that are heading in that direction. Otherwise, I'm going to head down the wrong road again.
Yeah. It's interesting, man. And it's funny because we're not unique, like our stories, right? And we hear that a lot. And I didn't know too much about your story before you and I hopped on to do this. But, my timeline, very similar, got sober, became a personal trainer. I mean, kind of the same thing. And so that just tells me that, that not that someone has to become a personal trainer or, make the fitness thing, such a big priority in their life necessarily, although I think it's important. It's the same thinking, right? Like stick with the winners, basically, and new healthy habits and all these different things. So it's not a new idea, right? Like we've never met before, but you were doing something pretty similar and you seem to be doing okay now, 18 years later. So As you got sober, what was the biggest thing that you struggled with early on, would you say?
Wow. Well, it's a loaded question.
Sure.
It's a lot of things. And I remember talking to people early on. I remember seeing these people come in and it's like, well, I need to make more money and fix my relationship and my health and do all this stuff. And I need to do it by next week, and remember, it's 100 miles into the woods and it's 100 miles back out. And there's a lot of things to take care of. But, we hear this all the time. You see it in memes and social media. It's like, stay present. That was one of my things. Was one of my biggest struggles was to slow down. It was to stay present. Over the years, I've learned, I studied, the Bible, the Buddhism, the Tao. I've studied so many different things. And there's a principle in the Tao. It's about slowing down. And there's a story in there, and it talks about slow down to get there faster. Slow down. We're all in such a hurry to succeed in this crazy man-made busy world that's keeping us all sick, that we forget to slow down and stay present in the present moment. That's what's really important. We don't, like the past, all the stuff that we did in the past that brought us to this point, the broken relationships, the problems, the arrests, the DUIs, all this stuff, all of our guilt and shame and crying can't change one thing of that past. We can't change any of it. All we can do is become better today. That's all we could do. And tomorrow, we don't know about yet. We might die later today or fall down the stairs or get hit by a car or whatever. Not to be morbid, but it's the truth. It could. We need to stay focused on the present moment. Set goals. Be responsible. Take care of yourself. Make intelligent moves along the way, but stay present and enjoy the moment.
Yeah. I'm thinking as you say that was probably, this is a question I ask pretty much every guest on the show. And I was thinking back, to one of the first times that consciously I was actually doing that. Like I was really doing a good job at being present. I had this, mediocre job. I had just gotten, so I was literally like cleaning up after a contractor, essentially doing a lot of sweeping. And I remember just being like, okay, I'm sweeping, like consciously just, I'm doing this thing. Like I'm going to focus on this because, it's tough. Like when I got sober, I came out and we had advanced beyond dial up and AOL at this point. So I hopped on Facebook after getting out of treatment. I started comparing myself to all these other people that I had, gone to high school with. And that can be really tough to stay in the moment for sure. When you're seeing what everyone else is doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be honest with you, and this isn't an addiction or alcoholism thing. It's part of the human condition. Like we want more than what we have, and we want it now. And the other part of the human condition, I want the most out of life with the least amount of effort. Right. And you just said that, like, I see that guy over there. Why can't I have $1 billion like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos? Well, they've been working really hard for 40 years at doing that. We didn't see that part. You can get mad at them or the politicians or all these other people and blame them for your failures or lack of success, but start working and doing the right things to get there, and your life will unfold that way. Remember, like I said before, it's 100 miles into the woods, it's 100 miles back out. So it took me years to screw my life up. It's going to take some time to repair. But the good news is that it doesn't have to take as long or be as painful as the ride into the woods.
Was that your experience that it sounds to me like, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think from what you're describing here, it sounds like things got good pretty quickly for you when you, no? Okay.
Well, no, I can't say that. I didn't have the same, I shouldn't say that. We all have a different path and we all have a different story. I didn't have the kids in the house. I didn't have some of the responsibilities that some other people have.
Right.
So, I was able to spend time in AA meetings and learn a little bit about sobriety and a little bit about life. And it was a tough road. Remember, there was a lot of there were times I used to punch myself in the head and because I didn't understand life. I had a very low awareness quotient, they call it nowadays, like emotional intelligence, to where I didn't know how to handle adversity. I didn't know how to, when things, I would try something and it didn't work, and I didn't know how to handle that. So I used to go drink or watch porn or go shopping or eat a pound of cookies. And these are things we all still do, or scroll on my phone now. These are all addictions. These are just cross addictions. Smoking, right? Watching 6 hours of Netflix. All these things we're doing as distractions to take us away from our responsibilities, because we don't know how to handle those, right? That's why when you're a kid and you don't know how to handle life in this big, scary world, alcohol kind of takes that away for 4 or 6 hours or overnight. And then the next day, that's why it's like the vicious cycle. The next day, those same problems are there or escalated.
Yeah.
And it just turns into that you end up under this big pile of shit and you don't know how to get out of it.
Yeah. Now, speaking of life, you are a life mastery coach. What exactly is that? Break that down to us here.
Yeah, that's a sexy term, isn't it?
I like it. Yeah.
Right. Well, originally all this started, I started doing this in years ago, over 15 years ago. And it was more just like addiction coaching, helping people get over addiction and alcoholism. And then it was just for men, because I started, in the 12-step program, it's like men work with men, women work with women. Otherwise, adult things happen and it all turns into a mess. So I started as a addiction recovery for men. But then what happened was I ended up with more women clients than men. And some of that is because women would come to me because their husbands or sons or somebody was messed up and they wanted me to fix them. But you can't fix somebody who's not ready to be fixed. So I ended up working with women and with couples because to teach them how to take care of themselves, to practice self-love, self-care, self-respect. And there's a difference between being selfish and taking care of yourself, and that they're not responsible for that, and that they need to set boundaries, but boundaries with consequences, and learn how to take care of themselves. And so that's how I ended up where I am. And so I also work with business people, and I'm a high performance coach and health and wellness coaching. But I stick that mainly, I would say like 80% of my business is split between addiction recovery and love and relationship counseling.
Okay, gotcha. And so in terms of this life mastery, how can this help someone in recovery exactly, would you say?
Great question. So remember let's go back to the beginning. This isn't a not drinking contest,
right?
I want my life to unfold, and I want to master every area of my life. This is why I get upset when people are like, oh, it's okay, we need to stop drinking, but keep smoking and eating a pound of chocolate every day. I think that's bullshit. The best defense against the cravings and all the other anxiety and crap that comes up is a healthy mind and body. And pumping cigarette smoke and crap and sugar into your body is going to weaken you, right? So I think that we really, for a week or whatever, keep smoking if that's going to like keep you from drinking or whatever. And then let's get real. And we want to master every area of your life. So when I start working with people, the first thing we do is we look at your life and your beliefs and behaviors in the following areas: your body. How do you feel about your body and how's your health? Your relationships, your romantic relationships and your family and friends relationships, your career, your finances, and your spiritual life. Those pretty much cover the big areas of life. So how do you feel in those areas? And then where do you want to go in each of those areas? Okay. So now we have goals. So now we start working on one of those goals, the biggest one, and we call it the one thing, because we only want to work on one goal at a time. The best example I use for this is New Year's resolutions. So every year we're like, oh, I'm going to quit drinking, write a book, lose 50 pounds, start a business, make more money. And then 2 weeks later, we're like, fuck this. I can't handle that. So we start drinking again and eat a pound of chocolate, and then we don't do anything. And next New Year's, it's the same 5 New Year's resolutions every year. It's because we're too overwhelmed. And that's why we drink too. So remember, the drinking isn't really the problem. It's what I'm using to cope with the real problem, which is my thinking. It's my lack of focus and my lack of direction in life. So that's what life mastery is. It's really about, let's remove the drink and we'll find ways to consistently do that. And then let's work on conquering the rest of your life so you don't need to drink.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. Yeah, and it's funny. You and I are on a very similar page here with the nutrition stuff. And I don't get up on my soapbox much anymore unless I'm, given an opportunity like right now, about the eating and these other health, physical health related habits, right? When I got sober, like I said, I was heavy most of my life, and I had wanted to get healthy for a long time. And, when I got sober and I was like, okay, I'm really going to do this, I decided that was going to be part of it. I think what I started to see is that, there needed to be some kind of alignment, like in terms of the outer me, or like the physical me, and how I felt on the inside. Right. Because it was like, I was looking in the mirror, and the way I felt on the inside as I started to grow and develop, and that thinking you were talking about started to change. I was looking in the mirror, and I was still kind of seeing the old Jonathan, and things didn't just felt mismatched there. But yeah, when I started going to like 12-step meetings and stuff, I started noticing, like, and this isn't a judgment like, oh, these people are doing bad stuff or whatever, or screw these people or anything. But I started seeing, like, tons of cakes all over the place, and like, people that had been around for a long time, that had emphysema and all kinds of other stuff. And I think kind of what you were touching on, my thinking was, I just got another chance at life. Like, why am I, putting aside, like, hey, if I have low energy and all this, I'm probably not going to be doing all these things I need to do to change my life. But that was kind of the way I was looking at it. So I get that, and I'm really passionate about that. I'm glad you're bringing that up. I always, Dennis, like, as I'm sure you do on your podcast, and I definitely got this out of your podcast, try to bring as much value to the table for our listeners as possible. And I think you've outlined exactly, or to a pretty good extent here, what it is you do with your clients. What are some of the specific tools that you use with your clients that might be beneficial to some of the listeners? You were talking about goal setting, and you were talking about some of these, specific areas, relationships, finances, physical health, and so on, spirituality. What are some little tools maybe that our listeners might be able to take advantage of that you could share with us?
Well, what's integral to my practice, and what I do with everybody, is I give a lot of homework, and it's all tailored every week to what's going on in your life. So I have countless tools in my toolbox, and it depends what somebody's going through. But if I have somebody who has a relapse, I'm like, well, we're going to write. And all my homework involves writing. Writing is the most powerful thing we can do, because it really remember, we were talking about slowing down. It slows us down. Okay. The average person has between 60 and 80,000 thoughts every single day. That's almost 1 per second. Now, if all those were really productive, useful thoughts, that would be incredible, right? We wouldn't be having this talk. We wouldn't need to. But most of them are either harmful or useless thoughts. Okay. So writing will slow our thinking down, and it'll make our thoughts tangible and manageable. We can actually organize our thoughts. So if I have somebody who says, let's say they had a relapse or something like that, I want to go back. I want to say, what happened? What were you thinking right before that happened? Right before you drove to the liquor store, or right before you picked up that drink? What were you thinking right before? Because that's the real reason we're drinking now. Okay. That's the real reason for the relapse. Okay.
Yeah.
What were you thinking right before? How did it make you feel? What could I have done differently? These are little tools that we use. When you talk to somebody and they say journaling is so powerful, make sure you write every day. It's very vague. All right, well, I woke up and today I had breakfast, and then I sat there, and then I watched the weather on TV, and then I went for a walk, and then I went to work for 8. It gets monotonous and boring, and nothing really productive comes out of there, right? So when we talk about writing, we want to be very specific. What am I writing down? What's the purpose here? How is it going to help me grow? So we give homework on every single session that we have. And I have my clients, sometimes we'll get into like deep talks, and at the end I'm like, all right, well, I'll see you next Monday. And they're like, wait, what's my homework? I forget. And you get addicted to it, because that's how you change. That's how you grow. So it involves reading. We want to always be reading something productive, always. And I have specific books and audio books, podcasts, YouTube channels that I have people listen to, whether they need to be taught how to meditate, which again is meditating and writing are two invaluable tools that every client needs to be doing all the time. And so I give specific books because we want to be enhancing our mind at all times, and we want to be writing down specific things. And I have other writing tools, but mostly I would say all of my tools center around writing and some sort of meditating, exercise, drinking tons of water. Like, I want your goal to be to pee 30 times a day. Part of our problem for disease and cancer and diabetes, organ problems and everything is elimination. It's not so much the foods that you're pumping into your body, although, pay attention to what you're pumping in there, but it needs to come out the other side. So we need to be drinking water and moving. People are like, I have a slow metabolism. I'm like, well, speed it up. Go for a walk. Get off of your ass. Stop playing Xbox and watching Netflix and go for a walk.
Yeah. The water thing. So I generally drink over a gallon of water a day. And I was joking with one of my clients recently. Yeah, exactly. I know. I got a shaker bottle right here. It's actually empty, but I carry around generally one of those obnoxious like gallon jug things. But anyway, just to get it all in there. But I was joking with one of my clients, and I was saying, I don't know how this works, but I drink about a gallon a day and pee about 2 gallons a day. I'm not sure how the math works out there, but yeah. And water, you mentioned keeping it simple and not overwhelming ourselves. I like water. The way I refer to it is it's like an anchor, it's like a really simple thing that you could do at the beginning of your day. And it kind of just sets the tone, almost like making your bed, it kind of keeps you grounded in your healthy habits. But I do want to ask about one more specific area here. And I'm just thinking kind of on the fly here with everything that's going on in the world right now, and thinking to, talking to new guys in recovery. When I was new to recovery, I talked about having this, honestly, it wasn't even mediocre. It was kind of a crummy job. But it was a job nevertheless. Financial stress is all, like, I don't want to say always, but it pops up a lot, especially for people that are new in recovery, right? Like it is a stressor. What if anything could you throw out about that? I guarantee there's someone listening that's having a tough time, with that right now. Like, do you have any tips or any advice there for that?
Yeah, I mean, that goes deep too. There's lots of different tools, and I have a financial freedom like program that I run people through who have like crippling debt, in 6-figure debt, and 2-figure and 5-figure incomes.
Right.
And that's so common too. So a bunch of things. Let's go back to the basics. Let's wake up and drink water and meditate and exercise, read something productive. If I wake up and start watching politics and getting stressed out and look what my friends are doing on Facebook, I become unproductive, and my thoughts tend to go in that direction. So we want to get centered. Always be centered. Come from a place of being centered, and you're going to make a more intelligent decision. The next thing is like work, and then watch your spending. People come to me and like, all right, let's make goals. Okay, so let's set some big goals. All right, I want to make $1 million a year. Okay, well, how much are you making now? Well, I make 20,000 a year now. All right, so I'm not going to say that making $1 million a year is impossible. It's totally possible. So that's an umbrella goal. Let's keep that there. But what if next year we can make 40,000 a year? Now we doubled your income, 100% growth. That's pretty cool. So let's stay clear and let's stay focused on realistic goals, and then create action steps every single day to work towards that goal. I think a lot of the reason people get so overwhelmed with it, and I've been there, I've had 6-figure debt before. Okay. So I totally understand. It's real and it's crippling. The stress and the fear surrounding that is crippling, but we need to get centered. And then we need to start working towards the goal, making intelligent action steps every single day towards it. Because the reason people get so tied up is because the same thing as getting sober. It took me 15 years to screw my life up, and I have to fix it by next week because I got shit to do. Right. Well, it took me probably a couple years of screwing up to screw up my finances. So it's going to take longer than a week to fix it. They're expecting to win the lottery and make everything turn around real quick. And you know what? And every once in a while, a miracle happens, and that can happen, but you can't plan on that.
Yeah.
So let's get centered and let's take responsible steps towards the goal. And then, we have to practice patience and meditation to get centered. Take your time and we'll get there. But it's real important to control your spending. Most of the reason we're in this crippling financial situation is because we're out buying Chick-fil-A at 3:00 every afternoon and wondering why we're $50 short every week. We'll stop spending $10 at Chick-fil-A. Are you hungry at 3 p.m? Or shouldn't you be working or doing something responsible to get you out of debt or to help with some of that financial fear?
Yeah.
So we really need to examine all of our in and out. What if we double your income and you're still not watching your spending? Like that's really important. We need to get clear on what's coming in, what's going out.
There you go. Yeah, you just nailed exactly what I was thinking as you were talking through this. And I think you brought up a good point, right? It's like, okay, let's reel into something more reasonable or attainable right now, $40,000 a year, or boosting that income. And then let's break it down to like, because man, it's overwhelming, right? It's like, well, how do I can't, and I'm just not, I'm just not going to do anything. Instead of, I think like what you're saying, it's like, let's rebuild your resume, or little steps that are going to get someone there. I think what you just touched on that really struck me as you said it, it's a lot of the times, again, back to like when I'm talking to someone about their diet or something like that, like we don't know, we have no clue how much we're spending, because we're not looking at it. And so I think you just brought up a really important point. It's like, okay, let's get clear on that stuff first, because man, I mean, the truth is most people are spending way more on just random crap. I know I was, especially early on in sobriety. Way more on random crap than I thought I was.
Totally. Yeah. So what we need and what we do is we write. So again, let's open up, and by write, you can type whatever floats your boat, man. I have these yellow legal pads and I have hundreds of them and I have stacks of them filled out with the writing that I did when I had a broken relationship last year, when I, some of the crises that I've been through in my life. I just write. So for financial stuff, we need to write. Open up an Excel spreadsheet. If you don't know how to use one, learn how to use one. Maybe that'll help you get a better job and make more money. It's really simple. It's set up for simple, right? It's set up for stupid, like us, so we can do that. Open it up, say every dollar in, every dollar out, right? And say, all right, well, if I make $1,000 a week, or if I make, let's get real, let's say I make $500 a week, but I'm spending $700, there's a problem. So what are we spending money on? Every dollar in, every dollar out, right? So you start with your nut, there's 500. And then, all right, I have to pay rent, I have to pay bills, and look at your bills. Are these necessary? Do I need to have 500 channels on Comcast? I don't know.
Right.
Or do you even need it? Well, Netflix is $12. Just watch on Netflix. There's like things that you can do to make changes, to small things that you could do to end up making significant changes in your life.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. I want to move on here if we can, Dennis. I want to ask you about your book, and it's titled Funky Brain.
Funky Wisdom.
Funky Wisdom.
Yeah, my podcast is the Funky Brain Podcast, and my book is Funky Wisdom.
Funky Wisdom. Okay, so it's Funky Wisdom, a practical guide to life, right?
No.
Okay, so who do you write it for, and what's it about?
So originally, I really didn't mean to write it. It kind of, I was going on long walks with my dog and listening to motivational, inspirational stuff, and I started typing down thoughts that came into my head, or I would take my phone and open up a notepad and hit the the microphone thing, and I would just start saying these thoughts that came to my mind when I was inspired. And all of a sudden I had like 50 pages of shit. And so I started organizing it, and I learned how to organize your thoughts and write a book and stuff like that. And then I started adding to it. And then I showed my fiance at the time. I was like, look at that. And she read it and she's like, this is really good. I was like, really? I'm like, I'm not a writer, you know? And so she read like 2 books a week. So, you know, when I started putting it together to answer your question, it was because of my background. It was my addiction recovery background. I wanted to hit. When I grew up in the world of recovery over the last 18 years, it was originally in the 12-step program. And what I found was that program was kind of difficult to read. Like, it wasn't like, all right, come in, sit down, here's step 1, let's figure it out. And then when you're done with that, let's do step 2. It was more like, you have to read this book. You have to have somebody explain it to you, how to get through all these steps. And then you jump ahead a little here and jump back a little there. And it was confusing. So what I did was I took some of the principles of that program, combined it with what I've learned over the years, and I made it a simple program that anybody can follow for any problem. It doesn't have to be addiction. It can be anything that you're going through in life. And so I created these 6 steps. It was like, first, there has to be awareness. You have to admit there's some sort of problem, because you can't solve a problem you can't admit exists. And then there has to be, you have to calm down. So that we go right into meditation. In the 12-step program, meditation and prayer is the 11th step. And I think that's a huge mistake. It's like, oh, I don't have to meditate until I get to the 11th step. So I changed that. And then we work, I won't get into it all, but we work through basically how to live as a mature adult, clean up your past, move forward, help other people, and be a responsible adult. And in it, I also took the how approach. So the how approach is, people say all the time, how do I become successful? How do I become sober? How do I lose weight? How do I write a book? How do I start a business? And how stands for honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. So when I become honest and say, hey, things aren't going well, then I become open to a new way of living. And then I become willing to apply that new way into my life.
Man, I like that. Yeah, that's interesting. Because I'm in a 12-step program. That's how I got sober. I still participate in that regularly. And that's an interesting point. That in the steps, the meditation is kind of at the end, but I was pretty much told from the beginning, hey, you need to be meditating. So yeah, I mean, yeah, that makes good sense. That's probably a pretty smart approach in the book there. Now, you also host the Funky Brain podcast. So tell us about that, about what you and your guests are talking about on the show.
Sure. And originally that started just as addiction recovery, and we'll have you on too, if you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I was going to force my way on, but thank you for the invite.
No, yeah, we're going to have another great talk. This is a great talk too. But originally it started just with addiction recovery. And I used to do a lot of public speaking. If you can't tell, I talk a lot. And when the world shut down last year, we really just sunk everything into, like, my team was like, let's just do podcasts. Let's do straight up podcasts. So I did a lot of addiction recovery, and then I started talking to different types of athletes and people out, like entertainers and a rock star and like all these people. So I was like, I started going in different directions. So it really covers a lot of different areas, from trauma and depression, and of course addiction and alcoholism. But it's still, I would say that the central theme is really addiction and alcoholism. You'll find, if people tune into it, you'll find that 80% of the episodes, and I don't even know how many there are, like 100 or over 100, but I would say most of them are in that realm. And so Funky Brain comes from years ago. In case anybody wants to know, in recovery, I would just like talk all the time in the meetings, and with no clear direction, because I didn't know really what was going on. I was just trying to learn how to grow up in my 30s. And people would say, oh, Dennis has Funky Brain again. So that's where that came from. I was going to call my book Funky Brain, but I like Funky Wisdom because it implies growth. But I called the podcast the Funky Brain Podcast. And so I'm the funky guy, man. That's how I roll.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. No, I think you've shared a lot of great tips and advice. And like I said, I think just valuable information that our listeners can really take advantage of and apply in their own lives. But before we wrap up, I want to ask if there's maybe one particular piece of advice that you'd like to share with the Sober Nation, whether it's for someone that's, trying to get sober, really having a tough time right now. Maybe they've been sober for a while and they're really struggling with mastering these different areas of their life. Maybe if there's any, just one particular piece of advice that you'd like to share with them.
Sure. It's real easy. Ask for help. That's the main thing I want to say is ask for help. We get so wrapped up in our problems and we try to solve them and they become harder and harder to solve on our own. So awareness is always the first step and then action. And there are some steps in between, but the last part there is accountability, right? I need to have a coach, a mentor. AA is awesome because of the fellowship, the sponsorship, all those things. Like if you don't call me, call somebody, call somebody and ask for help. Somebody who's not emotionally attached to your shit and ask for help. We were taught, oh, don't ask for help, just run through it. You could do this, or, if people have this conception that if they ask for help, it's a sign of weakness, but it's not. It's a paradox. It's actually a sign of strength, asking for help. I was taught to have an expert in every area of my life. So if I get sick, I need to go to the doctor. If I have to go to court, I need a lawyer. I hate doing taxes. So I need an accountant because otherwise I would just punch people. So I get an accountant every year to do my taxes. And if I'm having a problem getting sober, I need somebody to help me get sober, because I don't have those answers. Otherwise, I would have by now. So I would say, ask for help. Reach out to me, reach out to Jonathan, reach out to somebody, go to a meeting and talk, right? Nothing changes if nothing changes. If I wake up every day and start crying, but I don't do anything different than I did yesterday to get me to that point, then nothing's going to change today either. You don't have to do this on your own, and we're here to help. I want people to know that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a great point, man. I love what you said, having an expert in every area of my life. I've never heard it put that way. And I think that's super, super solid advice. But like you said, asking for help is really the first step there. That's awesome, awesome advice. So you can find Dennis's book, Funky Wisdom, on Amazon. And you can learn more about his life mastery coaching at dennisberry.com. Thanks again for coming on the show, Dennis.
Thanks, Jonathan. Great talk, man. I appreciate it. You're doing great work.
Be sure to check out the show notes for all the info from today's episode. Sober Nation FM is brought to you by Sobriety Engine. Sobriety Engine is a free online community of men and women supporting each other in their recovery. Visit sobrietyengine.com to join today. This show is also brought to you by Recover Health. If you're ready to get fit and start living a healthier lifestyle while supporting your sobriety, you can learn more about having me as your own personal fitness and nutrition coach at rcvrhealth.com. And again, whether you're listening to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or watching on YouTube, please share this with your friends, follow, subscribe, and leave us a review. Nation, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.